And Russian President Vladimir Putin has said that Moscow is prepared to resume peace and negotiations with Ukraine. Putin's remarks have come at a time when Ukraine claims a series of diplomatic and military gains, including long-range strikes deep inside of the Russian territory. But Putin has also underlined his conditions. Any future talks must be based on the Istanbul framework of 2022, as well as what he describes are the current realities on the battlefield.
Russia is ready for peace negotiations with Ukraine on the basis of the agreements reached earlier in Istanbul, which I remind you were initiated by the Ukrainian delegation at the time. That means everything suited them. I see no grounds for us to depart from these agreements. But this should be on the basis of the agreements reached in Istanbul, on the basis of the modalities discussed in Anchorage, and most importantly, on the basis of the realities on the ground.
Now, the Russian president has also accused Kiev of trying to improve its negotiating position through attacks inside of Russia, but has insisted that developments on the ground tell a completely different story.
Everything done about it by the Kiev regime that I have just mentioned is aimed at one thing only. It is to create favorable conditions for themselves should the peace talks that were interrupted by Ukraine start or rather resume. They want to enter talks from so-called position of strength. What kind of position of strength? At most, this could be about creating the impression of such a position, because the realities on the battlefield look entirely different.
Now, Ukraine has in recent months expanded its deep strike campaign targeting infrastructure far from the front lines. And earlier in the month, drone attacks had targeted energy facilities in and around Moscow, with images showing large fires and plumes of smoke coming from a refinery. Kiev has also intensified its operations around Crimea as part of its strategy to disrupt Russian logistics and to isolate the peninsula. Russian-appointed authorities in Crimea have said that the recent drone strikes have caused widespread power disruptions in parts of the region. The Ukrainian attacks on the Russian refineries have forced Moscow to ban exports of gasoline and jet fuel. It's also considering a diesel export ban, with reports even hinting at a possible fuel import to tackle shortages, especially in Crimea. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has praised his country's strike forces for what he called precise operations, arguing that the campaign is increasing pressure on Russia and is raising questions about the cost of the war.
The majority in Russia is already complaining to Putin that this war has no end in sight. All the current difficulties for the Russians should bring them closer to the idea that this is their war. It is not just a stone from the sky, and that their war must end.
Now, the Istanbul agreements refer to a draft peace framework that was negotiated between Russia and Ukraine in 2022. The proposals envisioned Ukraine renouncing NATO's membership in return for security guarantees, while leaving the status of Crimea and parts of Donbas for further negotiations. Now, Putin also referred to understandings that were discussed last year in Anchorage in Alaska between Putin and Donald Trump. Russia claims that these understandings involved freezing the front lines and limiting Western military support for Ukraine. Ukraine has consistently rejected any settlement that requires territorial concessions, but much has changed since the meeting. Moscow now says that the United States is ceasing to be an impartial mediator, arguing that Washington has moved away from what Russia describes as the spirit of the Anchorage understandings. And earlier we spoke with Dr. Lada Roslicki, a security and defense expert from Kiev and founder of and editor-in-chief of BNE Intel News, and Ben Aris from Berlin. Let's listen in to what they told us.
I think that both are possible. We do see a growing escalation and a return of very serious rhetoric from the Kremlin regarding the potential use of tactical nuclear weapons. I would not put it beyond the Kremlin to do such a thing. But we should also focus on the sanctions, the growing number of people who are being added to the sanctions, the corporations that are being added to sanctions directly related to the Russian businesses, state-owned businesses, but also businesses abroad that are cooperating and helping the Russian Federation overcome the sanctions themselves. So we have to have that international community really focusing on cooperating and realizing what the serious threat of the Russian war is, not only to Ukraine and the agriculture and fertilizer and energy sectors, but also to humanity, which apparently has very little meaning these days and time.
Indeed, I agree that the talks are going nowhere, that what we're hearing is a lot of rhetoric. Neither side wants to be seen as a warmonger. Both of them want to be seen as the one willing to do a peace deal. And yet the two sides are stuck in their respective positions. And on Putin's side, that is guaranteed no NATO membership, all of the things that were outlaid at the Istanbul meeting in 2022, and specifically that Putin is insisting on taking control of the parts of Donbass that he doesn't already control. For Zelensky, that's completely unacceptable. He's not going to give up any Ukrainian territory whatsoever. And he's dug his heels in. He said it's a red line. He won't cross it. And so neither side is prepared to budge. And so what we're seeing now, and the videos you're showing, is just this grinding away military campaign of destruction. And it's escalating, but it's not strategically military bringing the war further forward.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.